For me, this year is the pivotal year in the Ascension process. This is the way I feel about this year. And, we can say that about any year, but for me, this is the main year where I feel the light is accelerating away from old structures, old energies, and it's causing a certain amount of chaos, and it's causing a certain amount of confusion, certainly in the human collective.
And now it's like this energy is flowing to the individual and then the collective, and we are like taken into a learning curve while we are flowing with it. So what I have seen and what the Arcturian Council of Light was telling me is like surrender in accepting this light.
And then because of that hypersensitivity, and it hasn't yet integrated, there's a lot of outsourcing, right? Like I need answers about that, and this person helps me with that. And I find that that's the time where we need to stay even more narrow, so that's really what I try to teach, is like, keep it with you and God. Because the more opinions, the more cooks you get in your kitchen, the more confused you get about who's in charge. It should be you and your higher self and your teams of spirit.
Have trusted people in charge and people who were the leaders, and they found out that they didn't get great advice in a lot of instances. And so they're learning to trust their own intuition, something that we're all born with, and they're seeking out, okay, there's a better way. And when people are in fear, they lose clarity, and they are more apt to do just what those in leadership positions tell them to do. And I'm really seeing a change in that. People are going, yeah, I'm not going to do that again.
Today's episode is a special edition of the Spiritual Debate podcast. For the first time, I'm bringing together a roundtable of healers and channelers I trust. Leaders whose work I believe carries integrity, responsibility, and clarity in the way they access information beyond the mind. Joining me today are Steve Nobel, Livia Devi, and Julie Ryan. Each of us work multidimensionally. Each of us have different interdimensional experiences. Each of us listens into different layers of the field. And today, we're not here to predict the future or offer a singular narrative. We're here to mastermind evolving consciousness in 2026. This conversation is an invitation for humanity to tune into the collective current, to listen more deeply, to sense what already is moving, and to consciously meet what's unfolding as we step into new energies in 2026. This is not about who's an accurate channel or not. This is about what happens when channelers share coherence, their own insights, and come together to serve collective understanding. Let's begin. Phew, well, hello to my favorite people. Welcome to the Spiritual Debate podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am so excited to have all of you here today. For those of you who have not watched the Spiritual Debate podcast yet with each of these wonderful beings, I had the privilege and honor of debating, mostly just agreeing, let's be honest, with each of them on particular subjects. And what I loved about each of them is that there is a field of coherence that I feel in my heart is absolute resonance and truth for them. And so I asked them to join me on their Friday at midnight for Livia. Steve's basically bedtime right now, to join me in a conversation about 2026's energies. What do we need to know? What's been coming through their channels? What do we need to keep in mind as we move forward in the evolutionary current of our ascension? I think what's powerful for me is not just my channel and me talking about it, but us coming together to see what's alike, what's to come, what's new, what do we agree with, and where can we find some nuance if it's meant to be. So I want to kind of start one by one and just kind of giving me any pulses or feelings that you have about the collective energy. Steve, do you want to share any insights that have been coming through for you so far in 2026?
Well, 2026 has already started off with quite a bang, really. On the world stage, the world has been shaken, as we all can see, starting perhaps with, America has been shaking things up, the administration there, internally and also globally. Lots have been shaken up. I I think it's taken a lot of people by surprise. But for me, this year, whereas 2012 was already a trigger year, a choice year, for me, this year is the pivotal year in the ascension process. This is the way I feel about this year. And, we can say that about any year, but for me, this is the main year where I feel the light is accelerating away from old structures, old energies, and it's causing a certain amount of chaos and it's causing a certain amount of confusion. Certainly in the human collective, I'm not talking about the kind of the awakened, people who've got their finger on the pulse, but the human collective, I imagine and feel that there's a certain amount of confusion, chaos, anxiety, anger, injustice. Things are shaking up. um, I think that it's going to get stronger towards the end of this year. I think the chaos and volatility is going to continue for a while beyond this year. But this year is where we really start seeing maybe a greater, can I say, revelations in old structures. The darkness I don't think can hide as effectively as it could, even though, looking practically, again, in America, there's a certain number of files which have been, people have been talking about a lot. And finally, they're being pushed out and released. And there are revelations, I think, that's going to shock a lot of people, not just there, but revelations generally, whistleblowers. And, I think that's what's waking the world up, not spiritual revelation, where we do our spiritual practice and, we meditate with the light. But for the human collective that are not doing that, it's revelations that's totally shocking them. And this is what the earth plane's going through. And I think the more light that comes in, it creates chaos. And there's that famous quote, which I never understood, with Jesus the Christ, the avatar, said, I don't come to bring peace, I come to bring the sword. And I never understood that. I'm like, why would you say that? But now I understand that, when you bring in a lot of light, it just creates massive chaos. And it's just the way it has to be, and as I think most of us may agree, that chaos and volatility is a prerequisite for change at a personal level and a global level. So I think the world has to go through this, but I don't think it has to go to the degree it was heading, to be honest. And so I became quite vocal on social media. A lot of people were quite shocked because I started speaking out very directly about what was going on in America. I haven't spoken that directly before, and I got a lot of angry attack and a lot of, how dare you say this thing? Are you polarizing everyone? But I said, look, I consider myself a purple with a splash of gold. I'm not blue or red in any political system. But what I was seeing in America and what was going on was chaos, which was heading to a level which was not going to be productive, but was going to be counterproductive. So I started working on the inner planes with people. I started putting out stuff on YouTube, etc., to try and neutralize that. And now when I tune into that, I think it has been neutralized. I think change is still happening, but I don't have that same sense of urgency that I had for 2 or 3 weeks, which I was really like on nonstop on it, working on the inner planes and also putting a lot of stuff out nonstop, particularly aimed at the American star seeds. And so now I feel I can relax. Okay, the
Mm.
timeline, it's going to have its volatility, but it's all right. It's on track. We can expect volatility, but basically star seeds, I think, they have the ability to be in the world and not be so affected by it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a skill really we're developing by, be in the world but not of the world. I think we can move through the world. Certainly in my reality, I'm living in a pretty joyful, abundant, happy reality. But there are times, as recently, I have stepped out and going, enough is enough. We've got to do something here. And I particularly had a lot of conversations with people I consider complacent.
Mm.
Complacency, which I'm like, really, like, you can't be complacent. It's not like everything is set in stone, the light will win and everything. You've got to actually, there's things to do, there's things that need to
Mm.
happen. And so that's my take on it anyway. And also I did encounter a lot of what I consider spiritual bypassing, which shocked me totally, which was, everything's love and light, or what he's doing is for the highest good. I'm like, no, everything is not for the highest good. You are deluding yourself. And I had a lot of very delusional statements. I'm like, so I shook loose about 150 people out of my audience, goodbye, much love, and goodbye. So I see that this year is going to continue being volatile. And, I think it's now on a course where I'm not so worried about the world, actually.
Mm. It's fascinating you say that. I'm curious what Julie and Livia are feeling in this moment. But I agree with that feeling of that there was a lot of urgency, and now there's this feeling of I trust it's going to happen the way that it's meant to, and I have a good feeling. Like my life feels pretty fucking light right now. Yes, there's a lot that's coming up, sure, certainly, but it's held differently than it was even last year. It's like everything is held like a feather now. Doesn't mean that there's not density that's processed. It's just not as I gotta go into the darkness and process. Like it doesn't feel like I'm going as deep. Not that I'm not deep, but I just feel more embodied. And so, Livia and Julie, as you feel into that, is there something that you feel called to add in to the mix in this conversation?
Yeah, maybe I will continue what, Steve started. The energetics of 2026 are a total reset, compared with the previous years. And, it's such a different signature frequency than in the previous year. So it started, with an abundance of excitement and like an energy that was super high, which for me I felt to take a step back instead of like engaging with it and try to respond to it or even create with it. I felt like it's good to observe. So I took an observant role in these first weeks of January. And I'm like seeing how the energetics are changing and how everything is working in the quantum field, and the waves that are flowing into the quantum is inviting us to not respond, to not react, but more observe and learn. Because what I have seen in the previous years, at the beginning of the year the energy is quietly building up, while in 2026 it started like it is just a blast of light that exploded within the planes of existence. And then, this blasting light is the signature of 2026, meaning that, we need to engage differently with the energetics of this year. We need to take more, yeah, like to see how we are going to integrate this light within our physical bodies, energetic bodies, and light bodies, and how this is going to drive the collective consciousness of planet Earth to the next level of evolution. Because what I have noticed in the previous years, it was a learning curve. Like the human, the individual, and the collective had a little bit of gap into like learning about this energy and working with it. And now it's like we are just this energy is flowing through the individual and then the collective, and we are like taken in through a learning curve while we are flowing with it. So what I have seen and what the Actuarial Council of Light is telling it was telling me is like surrender in accepting this light at the cellular level and learn about this signature before co-creating with it. So it's a different way of like accessing realities than in the previous years. So in the previous years, the collective was accessing realities more in a linear way. Now we have the opportunity at the collective level to, be able to connect with what reality and what is real and truth and our inner truth, our inner power, our inner expression at multidimensional level. So I am learning by watching the quantum field, the patterns of this year, because when you go into the quantum, you actually see how the energetics flow and is creating a geometry, is creating a pattern. And then once you learn the pattern, you learn how to navigate it individually and at the collective. So firstly, it's a total different signature, is co-creating with us at individual and collective level differently, is a super high frequency compared with the previous years. It has a pattern, it has a learning curve, and is teaching us differently. And something interesting that Steve said is that this is a very important year within the evolution of humanity and the ascension process of planet Earth that goes until 2035 and beyond. Because what I'm seeing is that every year the energy is not it's not flowing in a linear way. It creates geometries, and it's actually taking the collective consciousness to the next level, and the next level always looks contrasting on planet Earth. But like for people that are able to access and embody the fifth dimensional consciousness, which I believe we all are in this moment in time, the ones that we are here, like we start to actually interact with geometries and technologies that is accelerating the evolution of consciousness for the collective, which actually is blowing things up in physical reality on the third dimension. They are meant for things to explode because of this like super high charge energy, which is light. So yes, we will witness some very interesting, very contrasting events compared with this year. But this doesn't mean that it's a bad, like this doesn't mean, it's not like in 2019 when COVID started. It's not when, 2007 when we had the economic crash. It's not about, we don't have through these cyclic events to respond and react the same way because the patterns are changing. So I think the energetics of 2026 is teaching us, take a step back, don't respond, don't react, don't go into that cyclic way of like repatterning and because this is how we are differentiating at the level of consciousness. The third dimensional consciousness, people that are not awakened will respond and react the same way. The fourth dimensional consciousness will start actually to inquire and co-create and understand and ask at the individual level, how is this serving me, how is this impacting me, how is this gonna create a ripple effect for my family, my community, my nation, my globally. And the people in the fifth dimensional consciousness, they start taking a step back and it's like, wow, this is incredible. you know and it's like it's like if you say to someone the third dimension, this is incredible, people that are directly affected by all these events is going to create like a very contrasting experience. Yeah, but like when you really take a step back and you look what's going on into the quantum and how everything is teaching, how light and energetics is teaching us to respond to what is happening through like the teachings we are taking from it. And then from the fifth we are bringing those teachings down into the third, is creating a total new way of like approaching and relating with reality. So this is my take, and this is why before we start our conversation you were asking me, how is this year for you? And I said quiet and peaceful. I'm taking a step back, I'm skiing, and I'm actually looking in the quantum, while everyone is kind of hurrying up, the end of the month is coming. We have to hit targets. It's like, wait a minute, world, like just slow down a little bit because learn about this year. Because every year we have so much to learn from the energetics and what's happening into the quantum field. And I think, for me, as someone that is in divine service, in pure devotion, for me, it's a responsibility to learn about this because I'm flowing these teachings down through my downline and my community, and I want to set up people in the right way and place them in the right direction. So that's my, takeaway from what's happening.
Phew. Beautiful. Julie, do you have anything you want to add in?
Well, I agree with what both Steve and Livia have said. I believe we're going through a shattering of the old ways, and you've got to shatter the old in order to let the new come in. And each generation that comes in is more advanced and more intelligent. I don't know if you've seen a 1.5-year-old be able to work an iPhone, but they can do it better than I can, and they can't even talk in sentences yet. So every generation comes in more advanced. Makes me think what, Steve, you were talking about is shattering. You think about it, you got to get rid of the old in order to make room for the new. And when I was in my 20s, when I was about your age, Victoria, probably maybe even a little bit younger, I was dating this guy, and a friend of mine was 20 years older, and she said, "He's Kool-Aid." I said, "What's that mean?" And she said, "Your bucket's full of Kool-Aid." And Kool-Aid, for those of you that don't know, is this drink that it tastes like fruit punch. It's got a lot of sugar in it. And when I was a kid, it came in a packet and you added water to it. Then you mixed it up and you could drink it. And it was like you could drink a pitcher of Kool-Aid for a penny or something. And she said to me, "How can you expect God to fill your bucket with champagne when it's full of Kool-Aid? They're both good. Kool-Aid tastes good, it looks good, it smells good, but it's not champagne. But you gotta empty the bucket of Kool-Aid in order for champagne to come in. And I think that's a great analogy for what's happening now. I also am reminded too that it's all an illusion. We're all here to explore and experience and create basically what you both just said earlier. And how do you create something new? Well, you are dissatisfied in some way with what the status quo is, and you create something new. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the old guard is dying off. And I think new ideas are being allowed to emerge and haven't been squashed and prevented from coming to the forefront to help everybody around the world. And furthermore, I think that we're all here to create. And as long as we have a breath, we all have purpose and we're all creating things that are unfolding. I think also because of all of this, the zeitgeist is changing. And to your point, Livia, earlier in the last 5 years, people have trusted people in charge and people who were the leaders, and they found out that they didn't get great advice in a lot of instances. And so they're learning to trust their own intuition, something that we're all born with. And they're seeking out, okay, there's a better way. And when people are in fear, they lose clarity and they are more apt to do just what those in leadership positions tell them to do. And I'm really seeing a change in that. People are going, yeah, I'm not going to do that again because that was not the best decision. It's turning out that's what the research and other experiences are showing. So I think it's all really good.
Let's just take the I think it's all really good and bring it down to the third dimension and go ahead and share that on social media right now and say, I think everything that's happening in the world is very good. I'm curious to see how that frequency would feel in the world right now because to Livia's point, like in this 3D world, sharing that in a time of such immense volatility and crime and war that this planet seems to be on the brink of, while I'm over here being like, Ra-ta-ta, like I'm feeling great. Like this is all happening in perfect divine order. Like it's a very weird energy to be in to like navigate the 3D world right now. I'm curious how you are all experiencing that. I feel very similar to what Steve or maybe Livia was saying about how many years ago when we were dealing with COVID, it was a completely different energy. It was like, oh God, like this is the time. Oh my God, it's the apocalypse. Like, holy shit, get it together. Like, it was like, who are my people who understand what's going on? Like, we need to stay together. There was this feeling of we need our tribe so that we can navigate these energies. This energy for me feels like, as long as I got God, I'm good. Like there's this feeling of really strong alignment in my own channel and trust in my channel that it's all playing out in however it's meant to. I feel a different energy between like I feel responsible for trying to be a warrior for the world. And now I feel like my light is the greatest thing I can ever use to be in the world. That's a different field that I'm co-creating with. And so I'm curious how that feels for all of you at this time.
Yeah, I think for me, yeah, I couldn't go into social media and say, everything's fabulous and wonderful. I mean, I do tend to go into social media and show a very light side of life, my socks, my lava lamp, I think the human side is very important, to say, hey, I'm having tea in a lovely cafe, which I'm pretty obsessed about having tea in cafes. But what I see in the community, I mean, I've got different audiences on different platforms. And what I see a lot of them want is, yeah, they have a foot in the spiritual world, or they're really immersed in the spiritual world, but they still also want clarity. They still also want a bigger picture. They also still want some kind of understanding of what is all this mean. They still want some kind of path through it, and they want some kind of hope or optimism. And so there are all of these. It's a bit like when Shakespeare wrote his plays, he would have to he would have to write it for the people down there in the 1 penny stores who are like the rough and ready, and the ones up there are a bit more intellectual. So he would write these plays for all of these different levels. And when I do social media or communicate out there, I'm trying to reach people at different levels and not to just kind of stay in a kind of 5D position all the time. And that's just my take. I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. We do, but that's my take, because I think if I meet people where they're at, and then you can lift them up higher. Whereas if they
Yeah.
kind of go, I don't know what you're talking about now, I can't resonate with that. So my personal view is to meet them and then help them raise their vibration up, to meet them wherever they're at, in their anxiety, their fear, their guilt, their confusion, and lift them up. And I think, like we've all shared kind of personal stories, people do relate to personal stories. They do relate to, hanging out in Romania, and serving a community, or, all of the ordinary things. And so one thing I don't trust, to be honest, is when I see people all dressed in white who talk like they're Jesus. And there are quite a few around, or Mary Magdalene. They're always talking in these very high fluting tones. And I think some people will go there, but I can't relate. I'm like, where are you? And I see them. Certainly I do retreats in Glastonbury once or twice a year. And there are other places, and you see them floating around in their white clothes and their huge crystals bouncing around their necks. And, I think a lot of people resonate probably with us because in a way we're ordinary,
Yeah.
and we're talking about extraordinary things,
Yes.
and I think it's really important to be I had a teacher many years ago who said this: it's really important to be ordinary and extraordinary. And I'm like, yeah, I can really get that. Not to be extraordinary all the time, because people will just kind of, I think, eventually won't resonate with you. That's my own take
Yeah.
on it.
I agree with that. Does anyone else have anything to add in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great saying, Steve. Be ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. And really everybody is. Even the most famous people. I mean, everybody puts their pants on the same. Everybody needs food and sleep and all of that. So I think everybody is a combination of that. And I think too, those of us on this call and many of our colleagues, we're raising the vibration just by the work that we do. We don't even
Yeah.
have to say anything.
Yeah.
It's just the vibe. I met Victoria and I was just enthralled with her in the first 2 minutes. I thought, "Who is this?"
Yeah.
And it's just because of her vibration. I even got her to sing on my show, you guys. And oh
Julie,
my
don't
God,
tell
what a voice.
everybody. I've only
What's
done it for you.
You're what?
I said I've only done it for you. I haven't done it for
I know.
anybody else.
I know, but she's really good.
All right.
And so
We
I
want
said, "Well, can
proof
you
now.
just sing a little?" And just her vibe elevates anybody who's around her.
Yeah.
Even before she even opens her mouth, let alone sings. I mean, my God, what do you guys hear her sing? So I think that we're all doing that, and we're all helping people raise their vibration, and they're not even cognizant of it.
So true.
Yeah. Or I'm not saying that we are not doing that. I think we are all doing that in our own way. We are doing our ordinary, extraordinary job. But I have seen people around that are doing something very different, and I kind of wonder about. And also, I've received a lot of clients who've been through the spiritual elevated, and then they come back going, help. And
Yep.
I'm like, wow, it's always, I'm always interested in what's going on in the scene in the whole spiritual world, because it's just so vast and different. There's
Yep.
just so much out there. It's a bit, when I first, I'm going to show my age now, but when I first woke up early 90s, there was not much around. It was like what was around was really good, and really solid, I think, organizations. But now, and I really wanted the mainstream to grab spirituality, and it has. There's publishers now publishing books and films, and now the problem for people is the choice is so vast that
Yeah.
how do I know who is the right person to go to? And this is why I think a lot of people are doing the highfalutin spiritual talk and everything, because it attracts people initially, whereas the
Yeah.
ordinary ones may not attract so much. But eventually, I think
Mm.
if you're putting out with integrity, authenticity, people will eventually come back to you or come to you.
Yeah.
So that's so I like being ordinary. I like talking about ordinary things, and
Mm.
my teacups and my latest Star Wars lightsaber lamp. Whoa! I could show it to you in my next room. Fabulous. Anyway, there we are. That's me.
Waking up can feel like your whole world is turned upside down, and there's no one there to catch you. Whoa! And so you ask yourself, who am I? What's my purpose? What are my gifts? And years later, you're still asking yourself the same questions. Q, the sovereign healer, the only psychic development and energy healing sovereign development school that'll help you understand your unique abilities without leaving your meditation cushion. Let's get it.
I want to echo this because this is the shit that starts to really piss me off that I kind of want to get into. Because for me, I'm like, how do you not know what is something as simple as that vibration feels off or that vibration feels right? Like, this is very elementary spirituality, the ability to feel something and to feel yes or no in the body. The fact that we're still looking at people in white robes who say that they were Jesus incarnate and we're believing it, to me, is like one of the most ludicrous things that I just can't wrap my mind around. And I know what that feels like because the undercurrent of so much of what my spiritual journey was for the first few years was wanting to feel like I belonged. Because I never felt like I belonged in my life. And I think a lot of starseeds agree. Like, there's this feeling of whatever's happening in this plane of suffering, like, I don't match. And so underneath my business, of my spiritual business, there was this feeling of like, well, if I can fix you, then I'll belong. Or if you like me, then I'll belong. And if I can do this right, then I'll belong. And it was all this, let me make it look so superhuman. Let me make it look so perfect so you never see a crack in the foundation. And then obviously for those of you, all three of you know that I've had entity attachments before, and it was a horrible experience. And I wouldn't wish that on my freaking worst enemy, but it was, that changed things for me because it humbled me to realize that I was aiming for the 12th dimension, but I literally couldn't tell you if I could feel someone had false light in their energy or not. Like, I literally couldn't feel anything about truth and resonance and coherence. And that's something that I still feel if I'm only talking about spiritual energy. I think in the mainstream world right now, we're seeing people start similar to what Julie was saying. Like, I'm finally starting to take a little bit of my sovereignty back and go, hell no, I've been playing your puppetry and I'm not really liking where this is going. I'm just talking about the spiritual community right now. Like, there is still something here for me that really I'm so passionate about. It's this, why are you still so lost? And I'm seeing this a lot already this year with I found Jesus. I left New Age spirituality and I found Jesus. But you left one dogma into another. Like, you guys probably feel me. I get so fired up because it bothers me. It bothers me that we're still having this feeling of lostness when we should be finding our own light and finding the simplicity in our own light and distilling all the noise down to the basics. And I do feel in 2026, there's going to be a lot of people who are lost in our community specifically. Yes, of course, in the world, but this feeling of lost. Why are we lost when the glasses are on our fucking head? Like, why are we lost? I'm curious what you all feel about that. If you have practices or tools or things that you're noticing, because I don't want this to feel like, we're just pointing out what's not working, but that we actually have something that we can help our people, the people who are walking with us, to have tools to navigate 2026's energies if they're feeling lost.
Well, I can share a perspective, like why people are lost. And I feel like, it's not a collective energy, it's an evolutionary energy. It's an evolutionary outcome. And I want to share a little bit about this because what happened? Yeah, what is truly happening right now? Why there is so much confusion, so much noise, so much distraction? Like, why things are accelerating? People are confused. They don't know where to go. They are taking identities. So in the past years, the ascension energies are starting to beam on the planet Earth from Gaia and above very, very strong. And what happened is that many people awaken suddenly. And when you awaken suddenly, and when you awaken, your trauma awakens with you. So there are many people that actually, are awakened and all their trauma comes up. They don't know how to address it. And what they are doing is that they are like walking on the seeker path and they go straight into extreme spirituality. So they
Mm.
start to do like to find themselves, and they go into taking spiritual identities and everything, and they are wearing white robes, and they think they are Jesus, or they think they are Mother Mary, and so on and so forth, and they're completely lost. But why? Because underneath is an unaddressed and unhealed trauma. And these people, the pain is so deep in their hearts that they need to take an identity, because there's so much pain that they don't know how to deal with that, and that's their only way to survive until they're figuring out
Mm.
how to heal themselves. And this is happening in such a, like, in the past years, it's like so intense. This awakening process, this trauma that is coming up is so intense compared with previous years. When, if you were awakened in 2010, and whenever, you still had time. You are awakening, you are taking a little bit slowly, then the trauma was coming up. You still had a lag and a time to actually deal with yourself and understand what was going on. But now, since 2020, people are awakening like crazy every day, and they are just not knowing where to go. Some of them, in the entrepreneurial world, they still, like, they are going back in their head, and it's like, I have to stay strong-minded, and I have to stay with a foot on the ground, and don't lose my job, and whatever is happening to me, I need to go to my job and completely, like, stay strong. But not everyone is strong-minded. Not everyone can actually hold strong like a oak tree when the storm is coming. So then, some people are just like, oh my God, like, when you awaken, when your trauma comes, when you start to actually tap into different realities at the same time, you don't know who you are anymore. And nobody around you can tell you who you are anymore. So people start walking the seeker path, and they end up taking identities. I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that. And they're completely lost and flower powered. They are just floating, like Steve said. You go to Glastonbury and you see people floating with their crystals in their head, trying, to ground. So, yeah. But I'm laughing about nothing to laugh, actually.
That is very funny,
I
actually.
did comment on day one.
Can I add on that? That I think,
Yes.
I think so I think what Livia was saying was about the suddenness of awakening is a really valid point, because I think when people do wake up suddenly, it is very, very confusing. I remember, because I woke up, I said, in the 1991, and I remember for a few years it was very confusing. And in my life in that time, so I've had a slower leap at it in a way. I've been in 3 cults, including the Catholic Church. If you include the Catholic Church, then I've been in 3 cults. And so I've understood cult mentality, and I was really embedded in it, and like, right, this is a cult. And then getting out of a cult. I've I've worked with what I consider force light teachers who are gray magicians. I would call them gray magicians, working with dark entities and really weird magical stuff. And it was a great learning curve. And in my time, I used to be a director of alternatives, a spiritual organization. I've probably listened to a few thousand speakers, authors, with all their views and different. And so my mind has been like, well, which one's right? But eventually, just my mind was like, boom. So I think having a long, slow walk into the whole journey, and then I had a dark night of the soul for 6 years. That whole experience has given me a kind of empathy for people who don't understand, truth from falsehood, who can't see a narcissist from someone who's genuine, can't see a false light person being, can't tell whether they're entity, the guides are really guides or angels are really angels or not. So I do have empathy because I've been there. I've been confused. I think if we go through the confusion, if we go through the being lost, then we can have empathy. But if we don't have the experience, then I remember I've met 2 narcissists in my life. One was a romantic one and one was a boss. I never understood narcissism before then, and then the universe went, "Do you understand it now?" I went, "Oh yeah, thank you." Tick. I'm not doing that anymore, because if any of you've dated a narcissist or been working with, then you know how intense it can be. So sometimes I think the universe will give us those lessons. Go, you want to see it, you want to develop empathy, or you want to work with people who have narcissist issues. You need to go through it. So I think sometimes the universe do allow us to go through things so we can develop experience, empathy, and ways forward, ways through it. So actually, when someone comes, we can say, "I've been in that labyrinth, and this is the way out," or "Here's 6 things you could try to get out." But if you've not been in the labyrinth, you can't really help someone to the same degree. So I often refer people going, I can't help you. You know, I don't understand addiction like that. You have to go to somebody else. So I think we do need some experience or some empathy or some way out of the labyrinth to help other people. That's just my own opinion anyway. There we are. That's it. Empathy.
To answer your question, Victoria, I think a lot of it's physiological because when people are in fear, they automatically go into fight or flight. And what happens when we're in fight or flight? Our cortisol levels go up, our norepinephrine levels go up, we have more inflammation, we don't feel good, the blood drains from our brain, goes to our heart and our extremities so we can run away from whatever the fear is, whether that's we're being chased by a lion or we're running late for an appointment. The body doesn't know any differently. The body's just in fight or flight. And when we're in fight or flight, as I mentioned earlier, we lose clarity. And when we're in fear, we're going to listen to what leaders, perceived leaders, are telling us to do. And we don't have the ability, in a lot of instances, when we're in fight or flight, to be able to discern between who's legit and who isn't. You know, how does this feel? How does that feel? I don't know. I'm just stressed all the time. My body feels terrible. I can't think straight. I'm having trouble sleeping, all of that. Also, I believe that what's happening is people are looking for ways to negate those symptoms. You know, how do I stay out of fight or flight? What do I need to do? And that's a step in the direction back to we create out of things that we know we don't want. If everything was just hunky hunky and fabulous all the time, nobody would have any incentive to create anything new. But when we know that we're in a state that we're not enjoying and we know that there's got to be more. You know, the old song, "Is that all there is?" We know that there's more, but we don't know how to get it a lot of the time. And what I'm seeing is a big shift in people saying, I I wanna explore this other stuff. I wanna explore how do I feel in my own body. That whole going after cults and you're saying, "I don't understand why people are globbing on to these spiritual figures that are a bunch of falsehoods." Well, it's because their brain isn't working properly. They're in fight or flight. They don't have clarity. And so I think it's as much physiological as anything. Not to mention not to mention, get off the news cycle. My God, we're 24/7 news. The philosophy of any news outlet, whether it be online or on TV or whatever, is if it bleeds, it leads. The most
Hmm.
horrific things are gonna be what they're gonna talk about. I love the evening news here. One of the big networks here says, "Okay, we had," it's they call it like their happy moment or something. So out of an hour broadcast, they have a 5-minute or less segment of something happy and everything else is terrible. Well, what happens in that situation? We got a 24/7 news cycle and social media cycle and all of that. And so what happens is people are in fear all the time. What happens when we're in fear? We're looking to see what's going on, even if it's not true, it's a perceived fear. And when we do that, what happens with the news people and, and all the social media? It's clickbait, it's ads. The more eyeballs watching it, the more dollars they can charge. So it's all about revenue. It's all about generating revenue and keeping people in fear, which keeps them in fight or flight, which makes their brains not work right. So that's my answer to your question.
I love this perspective. Can I share something, Victoria? I love this perspective, Julie's perspective, because indeed, like people are bombarded with different informations to keep them in flight and fight, and there is a strategy and behind this. Like there is there's intentional. This is intentional that it has been done
Right.
since the 70s, yeah, or even before that. So
It's been done
the
since the
thing is
beginning of
that
time.
yeah. especially, when it comes to media and like TV and everything, and people are still watching that. Um, and then imagine someone that is in that stream of consciousness is waking up, and then he has to go through the entire process of dissolution, yeah, and dissolving identities, how hard for that person is. So, you know, going back to a question that you asked earlier, Victoria, is like how people can differentiate what is good and what is not good for them. It's like, when they are in that stream of consciousness in the third dimension, people are numb. They cannot differentiate. When they are awakening, they are still numb. They're like a little eyes that start to actually melt, but a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And then as they start to heal, they start to access their heart consciousness. In the moment they start to access their heart consciousness, this is their, like compass that is telling them what is good and what is right. This is when they are creating pure discernment. This is when they are led towards the right decisions. This is when they start to become independent. Yeah, they are plugging ourselves out from the matrix. And this is when actually they start to lead with their heart and to trust only their heart and intuition. And, they start to take and make right choices for themselves. So until then, we cannot just, blame people that they are numb. They are just numb. And we've been there. I've been there. I was one of those people that were numb. I was not born spiritual. I was not born meditating. I,
I thought you were. I thought you were. Okay.
Yeah, Julie.
Yeah, I think you do a magnificent job of helping people get in touch with that side of them, the different exercises that you put them through, the different things that you teach in your trainings and with your client work that you do as well. Of, okay, let's stop for a minute. Let's really take a deep breath. Let's recenter, and then let's reevaluate. And you're a master at that. You do a magnificent job of that.
Thank you. I feel like that's a part of what I'm here to do, is more on the teacher front than anything, like teaching about consciousness and teaching. A lot of what I'm noticing with clients right now is there's a lot of past life interference that's coming through. A lot of past life interference that's coming through. People are wanting their soul gifts online. They're ready for it. The timing is right for all quantum alignment to be happening in the now. People are ready. And I think more than ever, we need our ancient intelligence to be interference free, and we need it to be in pure consciousness. And I feel more than ever, especially with the rise of AI, there's this kind of push for us as light workers to really be in integrity with what our soul's light is. And I feel that push and pull. And a lot of my clients, a lot of times it's like, why do you have so many cooks in your kitchen? It's like I've got a person for this and a person for that and a person for this, but they're all like all the same umbrella. And it's just getting guidance that's making them more confused. It's almost perpetuating it. And so a lot of times what I'm noticing, at least right now, is this hyper acceleration of light, this destabilization in the nervous system. It's bringing up for some interferences from past lives. I'm curious, Steve, if you're noticing that in your work at all, but that's a big thing that I'm noticing. And then because of that hypersensitivity, and it hasn't yet integrated, there's a lot of outsourcing, right? Like I need answers about that, and this person helps me with that. And I find that that's the time where we need to stay even more narrow, So that's really what I try to teach, is like, keep it with you and God. Because the more opinions, the more cooks you get in your kitchen, the more confused you get about who's in charge. It should be you and your higher self and your teams of spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm finding that it's almost like we're talking about two separate things. There's the collective, which is going into more anger, fear, injustice, going on the streets. There's that. But in the spiritual community where we're in, my experience is that this year and the end of last year, lessons and challenges intensified to a degree I haven't experienced before. Karmic patterns were coming up, bleed through from other lifetimes, especially with clients. Ancestral stuff, lessons coming much faster and much more intense than I've been, and much closer. I had, for example, friends that I'd known for years suddenly jump ship, like, boom, gone. And like, wow, where have you gone? At 3 friends, very close friends, gone. And I don't know about you, but I have a kind of a large extended circle and a small inner circle. So it's like that was like, oh, they've where have they gone? But it made me reassess a lot of my own stuff, and also my romantic relationship ended, so I'm now happily a monk in my 10th floor apartment, for the first time in my life, probably because I've been in relationship. I'm a Libra, and love relationships, but now I'm enjoying my own energy and being with higher self and guides, and just focusing 100% on the mission, really. And I'm at that stage of life, when you get to a certain stage of life, it's really not about building something, or it's more about giving back. Now I'm feeling I'm in that stage of life where it's all about giving back, rather than you know what's my next dream, or my next. I don't really, I don't really have it. A bit more travel maybe, but fine. So it's really about giving back. But I'm finding, I don't know how you guys are, but the intensity of lessons, the intensity of karmic stuff, the intensity of old ego things, which are still, I thought, hey, I've sorted that out, but there it is coming up. Or shadow issues, which are things like, the ego and shadow, those kind of things. Or entity stuff, or people in the world not being what I thought they were. Oh, I mean, it's just been really intense for the last probably 6 months for me anyway. I don't know about you
Yeah, me
guys,
too.
but
Yeah. Basically, all of my friends from my wedding as of September, there had been a huge shift that I had had. Like I just woke up and had a different feeling. And that different feeling was like, okay, there's a new energy in the field, and there's a certain level of exchange that I'm looking for. And these were people who I had walk in my wedding. Like there was, boom, new shift, and just the energy cleared, very similar to you. And what was fascinating about it is the grief that I probably would have had in the past didn't feel like the grief that I had now. There was just a faster understanding. It feels like the energy is really intense, but the understanding happens faster. If I just flip my perspective just a hair, it's not as deep as it used to be for me right now. It just feels like, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, I can see why that's processing the way that it is. Like, well, what if it's all for the highest good? Like before, it used to have to be like, and then reframe, and then try to make my brain understand the new pattern, and then digest it as I'm processing the emotion. It's not as intense for me in the alchemy process. The emotion is intense, the thought is intense, but the understanding, similar to what Livia was saying about the new patterning, things are happening faster than they ever have.
Yeah, I'm finding that. And I guess if we're going through this, I imagine this spiritual community is also going through this intensity at some level, I imagine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yep, Julie.
I had the same thing happen, Steve. I had a couple of people that had been in my life for decades and like got weird. And I'm going, what is going on here? But like you, Victoria, same thing. I was like, okay, well, we're just not resonating anymore. And and when I look back at it, I think, okay, it's been going on for a while. I just didn't pay that much attention to it. Furthermore, your point earlier, Victoria, about how it's coming back to our individual relationship with God. I think that's what most, if not all, religions and cultures started off as. Think of the Catholic Church, those amazing cathedrals and basilicas. How were they designed? They were designed to raise an individual's vibration so they could more easily connect with spirit. You had the Gothic design to your geometry, Livia. You were talking about that earlier. You had the beauty of the place, just makes you feel better when you're in a beautiful place. The stained glass windows, the olfactory with the candle scents and the incense, the music certainly raises vibrations. St. Augustine said, when you sing, you pray twice. And so it was all designed for that. And then I think to your point, Steve, a lot of it's gotten modeled and corrupted in some ways, but the basics are still there. And so when you said that earlier, Victoria, I was saying, well, it's kind of like going back to the future. We're going back to how it was all originally designed. I mean, look at the pyramids, look at all that stuff. They're all, and Livia, it sounds like you're way more into the geometry of everything. It's been my experience that all spirit communication is numbers. I mean, our brains decode them into different ways. They come in things that we picture, or things that we feel, or things that we think, or things that we hear. And so geometry certainly is mathematics, and mathematics is the universal language. But Victoria, I think you're bringing a really, really salient point, which is it's between us and God at the end of the day. And what's your relationship? How does that look for you? How can you strengthen that? You know, all these other spirits were a fractal of the divine, but it's the divine that's speaking through, you know, our great grandmother Betty, who's coming to visit us at night and give us advice on something, or some ancient spirit guide. It's all the divine. We're all fractals of the divine, and it's all the divine, I believe, working through these other entities because it's a little bit more familiar from our human frame of reference instead of talking to God himself. We're talking to Merlin the magician spirit or somebody like that. Does
Mm.
that make sense?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
100%.
So I
Yeah.
think you're on it, girl. Yeah, I think you're on it.
Yeah, I think
I
that,
Yeah,
think there's
Steve.
some
I think that my experience is, to relate to God is such an abstract. I was just in Istanbul recently, and I went to. You might like that actually, Livia, the mosque, Blue Mosque, and it's all sacred geometry. It's all there's no imagery. There's the old Roman churches which are now mosques with the images of Jesus and everything and Mary. But the Blue Mosque, it's full of color and light, and it was the most staggering place. And I had this experience in the courtyard. There's a big courtyard, marble courtyard. And I had this experience of angels in the courtyard, and I just was transfixed for about half an hour, going, "What, wow, what's this all about?" And um, but it's an interesting place because it's the light and the dark. It's also Istanbul was the place where Theodosius, first the Emperor Theodosius, embraced Christianity, and so it became the religion of the Roman Empire there in Constantinople. And within a very short period of time, the Roman Empire fell. And it's very interesting because I did some research on it, and apparently in Rome they had this goddess called Vesta, and she was the goddess of the home and the hearth, and she was a very domesticated goddess. And apparently in Rome there was a temple dedicated to Vesta for 1,200 years. A fire was lit in this temple for 1,200 years, right in the very early times of Rome. And the Romans believed when the fire was put out, Rome would fall. And actually, when Theodosius embraced Christianity, he made a declaration that all pagan temples had to close. The goddess temple, the fire was put out, and the Roman Empire fell within 20 years. After 1,200 years. It's very interesting. But I do feel that all gods and goddesses are aspects of the one, but we can't really connect with the one because it's just too vast an experience. But we can. So for me, I can connect with goddess, Hathor or Isis, or these goddesses or gods. Or they're all facets of the one diamond. And I think a lot of ancient civilizations saw it that way. That each one was a facet into some greater mystery. It's only, I think, in the monolithic ones where all of the pagan and heathen traditions were banished because they were heathen and barbaric, but all of them were, in a sense, kind of what do you call it, monotheistic. They believed that all of them were aspects of the one. So that's still my view. I can much more connect to God through a goddess or not so much Merlin these days, but than actually going into a church and going, the oneness. Oneness is such a vast concept, isn't it? Everything is one. It's such a vast concept, but to go through steps, I think we go through these steps to understand that. We have to go through a number of steps to go, oh, there we are. I'm there. I can get it now, but we can't get it from here to there. We have to go through
Yep.
steps. That's my feeling anyway.
I love it. I love what you mentioned in the mosque, like the presence of light and darkness, and what we are witnessing. And we spoke earlier about 2025 and how that was a different signature year than 2026, and how it was merely closing karmatic timelines from thousands of years ago. So there were some themes coming from ancient civilizations karmas for us to actually close cycles and
Mm.
complete. And it was a very interesting dynamic. Last year was a year of completion, was a year of clearing, of purification, of transformation, of rebirth, of phoenix rising, of but in that karmatic clearing, which was generational, ancestral, multidimensional, civilizations level. It was also what I noticed, like uh, like I saw how light and darkness are actually, for the first time, like overcoming or moving into a threshold of unity. It was
Mm.
so interesting. I've seen how, like everything that happened, like Roman Empire that creating so many structures and so much control over so many civilizations that fell before of the Roman Empire, and then Roman Empire fell because of the transformation. Like everything is happening within karmatic cycles and completions, and everything is balanced, over the history and in the universe, to actually for us to understand what oneness consciousness is. And oneness consciousness is not good and bad, uh, you know uh, and all these dichotomic and dualistic concepts. Oneness is understanding the contrast in order to see the potentiality of light. So last year I've seen how all these recurrent patterns coming from different civilizations and coming from different timelines, and even in my personal experience, like I've seen people from the past trying to enter my life, that and playing different roles, and but there were still those patterns when I had to cut off and clear out the field again, because this is how I always do it. Like, for me, I always do things like this. I'm seeing also, how we are tested to see how much we have learned at individual and collective level, but also we are moved into a more compassionate way of being and understanding light and darkness, and actually to there is a seed in our heart consciousness what oneness is, and how we are accepting the darkness, that everything outside of us is a reflection of something within us. So, or like it's something inside of us that we need to love and accept and collapse and forgive, in order to actually understand external experiences that are very contrasting. So,
Mm.
well, last year I noticed like this seed of oneness consciousness being placed in many people's hearts, because we are going through these cycles of transformation and embodiment, in our ascension evolutionary process multiple times. But last year I saw how this like individual experience and micro experience was projecting to a macro experience. So, a very interesting patterns that when we dissolve things at the individual level, it seems that is collapsing timelines and even historic and past timelines within collectives experiences and even history itself. And this is
Mm.
something that I noticed this year, like within this energetics of 2026, when you go into the quantum field, you see the web, of like all timelines, all realities, past, present, future, how you start to navigate in a different way, and how aspects of your past experiences or past selves are interacting with the present self, and aspects of your future selves are interact with your present self. So the linearity start dissolving, even within the quantum. So then we start to actually go into this quantum web and understanding the matrix of our soul, by the way,
Yes.
because Steve is the soul matrix, which, yeah, it's fascinating, and like for me, I'm directly involved and an observant like, I'm an observer and a direct participant within this game of life, and I'm going through my own things, and in the same time I'm observing, and it's so interesting for me, like everything what's happening. And guys, last year, at the personal level, big things happened in my life. I don't want to mention here, but like big things happened, big change and transformation. And I still like, observed how everything is like, you know coming to completion,
Yeah.
so powerful. We are living powerful times.
Ho ho. Steve, Julie, whoever wants to go first, it's all good. I love it.
I think the bottom line here is what I've heard a bazillion times from spirit, and that is, in the spirit world, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. It's just an experience. In the human world, we need both the light and the darkness. When you were talking about that earlier, Steve, and Livia too, I kept seeing the yin and yang symbol.
Mhm.
When you were talking about you got to have the contrast so that we can create something new. But I find it fascinating. And I go to that a lot when something feels really badly. I'm thinking, okay, this is an experience. How's it benefiting me?
Yeah.
How is it serving me? How's it helping me? What's my spirit wanting to experience and explore here? And it keeps me out of the victim mentality.
Mm.
Because when we get in the victim mentality, then we're in a black hole. And so I just wanted to throw that in.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Steve. And then I got
So,
something.
well, I got a few things. Firstly, I think timelines are splitting, and they're getting more and more wide. It's harder to have a foot in both worlds. But there are a lot of souls in this planet, I believe, that are not interested in the 5D timeline. They're not going to go there. They're pursuing their own evolutionary journey that is not 5D. They've got, people are. If you look at people who sign up for jihads and all that, they're not going to suddenly, become enlightened. They're just going through their own progression, and they'll go somewhere wherever they need to go. The other thing about timelines, I think, is for many years, thousands of years, humanity has been um, influenced by the past. The past has always been the driver of humanity. But now, what we're seeing with the timelines and the shifts is the future is speaking to us more than the past. So, in my own life, I feel I'm constantly tuning into the future. What does my future self want? What does my higher self want? Where do they want me to go? What's the highest path? So I'm not going to my past to make choices about my future. I'm going into the future to go, well, which way is the highest path? The other thing I want to say, which may be slightly contentious, but it's we all have slightly different in terms of the spiritual community. People have different attitudes towards light and darkness, and so in my attitude, there is the yin and the yang, there is the light and the dark. I was in Wicca and shamanism for many years, and so I've explored dark goddesses, which aren't dark in the sense of opposing light. They're dark in a kind of the nighttime sense, or helping you go into the underworld sense. They're not dark or opposing or difficult. I did a transmission recently with Kali, and she's quite something. Kali's quite something. I've done transmissions with Sekhmet, who's also quite something. But I see those dark goddesses not dark as in what might people say opposing the light. They're actually dark, but helping the light in their own way. There's the I went through a Buddhist stage where I thought, well, actually, the Buddhists believe that darkness is ignorance. And I kind of think, yeah, I can see that darkness is ignorance at one level, because people who do dark things or evil things are kind of not aware of the big picture. But then I had a dark night of the soul, and I never believed in darkness to the extent that I'd kind of now believe in it, because I had an experience for 6 or 7 years where I was basically, I got to see what are the lower astral planes, because I never saw them before. And I'm like, oh, whoa, that's the lower astral. What are lower astral beings? Or what are fallen beings? Or there's a whole range of beings which I think are not, when I say, they are not the yin and yang of the light and the dark, as I talked before. There are beings who oppose the light, who oppose the evolution of humanity consciously. They're not unconsciously opposing it, they're consciously opposing it. There are beings who I think, are aligned with satanic practices, in high places. And that's the problem in the world that we're facing today, that a lot of those satanic practices are behind closed doors, that people don't know about it. In fact, through the media, they poo-poo anything of the occult, but behind closed doors, they've for centuries been doing it. And black magic is very real. I've experienced black magic many times, and I can tell you it's very, very real. It's not my own illusion of, well, my ego's being rattled, or I'm afraid of something, and therefore, or a medicine man points a bone at me and I believe in it. So I've been kicked about so badly in different ways, and it's been part of my training. So I do believe in this game of light and dark. At a higher level, it is a game. But at the lower levels where we are on this plane, it's quite real in some ways. There are beings who totally oppose what we are doing. They totally, if you look at every spiritual teacher that's come on the planet, they've been opposed and blocked, and their message contorted deliberately. It's not all mistranslation, it's deliberate. Christianity is a classic example of the light, a message of love being contorted into war and oppression and colonialism. So that is not, some people making mistakes. He said love and light, God is love. And, Christianity has not been love and light for thousands of years. And and people are still fighting religious wars because there's a benefit for some people in those wars continuing. If there wasn't a benefit, it would end. Humanity would say, most of humanity don't want wars, but there are people pushing it. So I do believe, so in my own view about light and dark is there is light and dark in we've got light and day, day and night. We've got the kind of yin and yang. They're kind of part of the normal growth of, the masculine and feminine. But then you have light aligned with the light, and you have those aligned with darkness. And in my experience, those darkness are playing. They don't think it's a game. They think it's real, and they're going to do everything they can to win that game. So we're going to understand there's different levels of the game. We can rise above the game and not play that game, but we have to know that game is being played on the earth plane. That's my own perspective and my own experience.
100%. I agree with you. And I think it's good that you said that this, light and darkness in the third dimension is very real compared to what's happening in the fourth and the fifth dimension. Yeah. And in the third dimension, yes, I fully agree. Everything, we all had been attacked. We all have experienced black magic. We all had been, yeah, I have multiple experience that I can share with you guys of how many times they try to block me, and this continues. This is good because this is good awareness because, it's it helped me actually train myself and understand what we are dealing with on planet Earth because these, civilizations and beings are very real and they are doing consciously, things that are opposing the light and the evolution of human consciousness. That's 100% true, And I feel like this is a good teaching because, when someone is awakening, it's not awakening in 5D and then goes down in 3D. It's awakening in 3D and goes up in 5D. So in the third dimension, they will actually face this. And if they are not aware of this, of what is happening, they can be easily infiltrated, they can have entities, they can, their path can be distorted, their destiny can be swapped. There is a lot of things that can happen there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add something before? I want to say something because I missed out that some people think darkness is just our own ego or our shadow selves. And there is definitely an element of that if we're not aware of our ego, if we're not aware of our shadow, that means we can be more easily manipulated. But I don't see that dark forces are all our own shadow or ego. I don't believe that. That's not my experience. I've done shadow work for 30 years. I've done working on my ego for 30 years, and I've experienced entity attack, which is not I know my ego voices by now, or most of them. We have these self-talk ego voices, and I know there's voices which are like, you are nothing to do with my ego. You're something else. And I've experienced it ongoingly, but now I'm used to it. And so I banish them and get rid of them. So I think there is a distinction between, yes, there is a connection between our ego and our shadow, but there are also external forces that we have to be aware of. If we're not aware of them, we can be influenced by them. But the other thing about it is those kind of forces are interested in people like us. They are interested because they would really like to stop these conversations. That's why they would go for us. It's not just our own ego tripping us up. Our ego will trip us up, but when we can transform our ego becomes a helpful ally. We can't transform entities. We banish them. And entities have been known for hundreds of years by, if you look at the occult, and I've been into the occult, most occult teachers would say you have to be aware of what beings you're connecting to on the inner planes. And there's various techniques of checking them out. Are they force light beings? Are they aligned with the light, or are they fooling you? And I've met a lot of people who've been totally fooled by beings on the inner planes posing as angels in their higher self. And if you don't have that discernment, you're going to be fooled. It's very dangerous, actually. So it's a very important point, I think. Yeah.
I remember when my mentor said to me, you don't think that an entity would pretend to be your grandma and come and visit you to deliver you a message? And I remember being like, no, I don't think that. Why would an entity pretend to be my grandma? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. She's like, well, you've already been fooled if you don't think that you could possibly be fooled. And in that moment, it was like, whoa, a being can be so close to being perceived like my grandmother, but it wouldn't be. And if I didn't have the tools to navigate it, I would be fooled before I even knew it. And that's often what I see. I see people who, and in my own experience, what I've had to learn how to do is to live with caution, not fear. I think this is so important. There's a difference between I'm double checking because I want to double check, right? It's like if I put my baby in the backseat of the car, I'm double checking, making sure that the seatbelt is on, not because I'm afraid they're going to die, but because I want to double check. That's a different energy for me. I take the energy of unity. I understand unity and I understand it in the highest vibration, but then I bring that down into the mastery of how I navigate this third dimensional matrix. And that doesn't come from fear. In my own experience, it did once when I had my entity experience and I felt like, what the fuck is this? Like, grab your swords and your lightsabers. I'm coming over to Steve's house to grab his fucking Star Wars lightsaber. Like, it felt like I needed to fight against something. That vibration has completely shifted. It feels like now this is a prerequisite to get to 5D, in my opinion. Not that we need to be attacked, but we need to understand that that exists. And then what do we do with that information and how do we navigate it? We need, I think in 2026 more than ever, I think energetics will not lie. And I think you'll get an instant clapback if you're not following your intuition. I think you'll get an instant clapback if you're not creating the reality you desire in pure vibration. I think you're going to get instant clapback in the field. And that's good because it's teaching us that your vibration has to be real and it has to be true and it has to be true light. More than ever, I see that in 2026. So I think energetic protection and whatever that looks like is going to grow. Not just because we're all one with God. No, we need to know how to be able to clean our field, cleanse our vibration, restore our coding, like actually be able to filter low vibrational energies through our field in record time. Because my feeling, as we kind of try to wrap this up here, is that 2026 is the year of the happening, is how my ninth dimensional Syrian channeled it. He said, it's the year of the happening. And for a lot of us, there's a lot of things that makes us do. Makes us go, oh boy, get the, non-perishables, like we're going down. Like maybe make us do that. It can make us like excited, like Livia, kind of more observatory. Like it might make us feel like that. For Steve and I, who work more on the in the clearing of what's going on in the lower astrals, it might make us refine our methods to be able to navigate the planes of reality. Like Julie, when you're working with different clients who are going through like medical stuff, because I don't think we've ever seen a sicker generation, and I don't think we're done with that. I don't think our bodies are able to adjust to the light quite yet, and we're seeing that through ailment and illness, and we're going to need medical intuitives like you, Julie, to be able to support. And I don't think that's going to stop. I think that's going to accelerate so that the energetics are clear. And I think this is going to be the year of the happening. And actually, the final message I want to say, and then I would love everyone to kind of wrap up with any final thoughts. Tay, my ninth dimensional Syrian guide, said, we would call this the year of the horse. A lot of people have said that. This is the year of the horse. We're stepping into a new cycle. It's the year of the horse. He goes, I'd actually rather you call it the year of the owl. And here's why. Because it's only once you actually see in the dark are you actually able to master the light. It's only actually when you know how to turn your sight inward that you can truly be free. If we look at the horse totem in 2026, lots of horses are in pens. Lots of horses are not free. They're not the white horse that Jesus is riding in the night. Like the actual energy of the horse has quite a lot of karma in order to be free. But if you're an owl and you learn how to be nocturnal, you learn how to truly be able to see in the dark, you know how to turn your energy inward, turn on the eye and actually see, you will be able to master the energies of 2026. And at the heart of that, that's really what I feel the energies of 2026 are offering us. Accelerated speed of light, but only if the eyes are in and we find freedom within are we going to be able to navigate the, oh shit, it's all happening, whether that's happening within or without. So on those long tangents, does anyone have any final reflections about that or anything we want to share about 2026's energies to wrap up the spiritual debate?
I think the goddess Athena is with you, V. The goddess Athena and an owl. She had the owl with her. My final comment is to people is do not fear the dark. Also, do not fear the light. Also, do not fear freedom. A lot of people fear their freedom. What is that like? Do not fear freedom. Do not fear stepping out of the spiritual closet. Do not fear being seen truly in the world, heard truly in the world. Do not fear being weirdly yourself. That's my message.
I have something to share as we are wrapping up. I think 2026 is, asking us to make a step more into the world, to share our voice, to be more authentic, to share who we truly are in our essence. And, as we are doing that, we have to let go of the fears that the darkness is going to following us because we start to share our voice. Yeah, because there are so many people out there that they are afraid to actually share their voices because they think that something is going to happen to them, because they are looking at us and we are sharing so many stories that happen to us, and then they are like, oh my god, if I'm going to be like her or like him, maybe I should stay quiet and let them lead and pioneer these timelines for humanity, which I feel like is not okay. So my message is the following. When you are walking your path with realness, authenticity, in your heart centeredness, in your alignment, when you are doing your inner work, when you are facing your inner darkness, when you are like evolving, ascending, when you are aware of what's going on in the world, when you are aware of what's the energetic output, what's like what when you are aware of energies and everything, how they are interacting with you within this different planes of existence, then you are safe. And I want to bring that message of safety because people are afraid of many things. They are afraid, of what's happening in the world. They are afraid of their security, their stability, their children, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen with the governments, what's going to happen with crypto, what's going to happen with gold and silver. Like people are just afraid all the time. Yeah, so it's like the message is like when you are walking your own path, when you are like in full alignment, what's happening is that you are not only healing, transforming, evolving, ascending, but you are rising your frequency. And frequency is very different than vibration. Yeah, I like between frequent, there are two different things and two different definitions to this. Frequency means that you are starting to connect with your higher self, that you start to embody the truth of your own higher self. And when you do that, you start to tap into different realities and streams of planet Earth. And this is what I want to bring this message to the world, that guys, you are not living in one reality. There are infinite realities within different bandwidth and frequencies of planet Earth. And as you are raising your frequency, you are also becoming invisible to the dark forces. When you are in the lower planes of existence and you play in those realms and you are not doing the work, you are not elevating your frequency, of course you are seen, attacked, and put it in the corner, and bad things will happen to you. But you have the choice to elevate your frequency. You have the choice to choose your reality. You have the choice to actually walk your own path, your own truth, to connect and merge with your higher self. And this is how this race, like our human race, is gonna evolve. And it's like I want people to understand that they do have the choice to tune in, to merge with their higher self, to choose planes of existence where they become invisible. One thing that the Sirius Council of Light taught me in my training before I became a trans channel, they said to me like this: when you are walking purely into your truth, when you are speaking from your heart, nothing can actually get to you. When you start being afraid of being yourself and speaking from your heart 100%, this is when there is like a seed of fear in you, this is when you are going to be seen. This is when the cloth, like the invisible cloth around you is going to dissolve. So just stay in integrity, walk your own path, stay in your own heart, and know that you are safe, protected, guided, and supported. And we are here to guide you. So this is a teaching that I'm still following, because it got me out of big troubles, when it comes to different attacks that happened in the past. So wear that beautiful invisible cloth and walk with God. That's my message.
Well, absolutely wonderful, my friends. I can't even believe, I think I'm looking at the time, it was like an hour 22. Thank you for hanging out well past some of your bedtimes. This has been absolutely wonderful. I didn't know where this was going to take us, but I had an intuition that it needed to be all four of you. Me included, obviously. I was supposed to be here. So thank you, Julie Ryan and Livia Devi and Steve Nobel, for joining me in a Channeler's Roundtable, the first time I've ever done this and certainly not my last, to co-create in the field of truth and light and understanding. What are we going to be navigating in 2026? So thank you all for being here, and thank you all, as always, to our extraordinary light workers. My dad, who always watches this, who probably didn't understand a friggin' word, but hopefully he felt the absolute truth. And I will see you all again very soon.